In my profession, we talk a lot about catastrophic failure. It's a technical term for the moment a structure can no longer support its own weight. As an architect in the city of Chicago, I've spent 20 years ensuring that the steel and glass giants of this skyline never reach that point. I know how to calculate wind loads on a 90-story tower. I know the exact PSI of high-grade reinforced concrete. And I know precisely how much pressure a single grade 8 bolt can take before it shears and drops a floor into the street. My name is Elias Thorne. For 12 years, I believed my marriage to Sarah was the one structure in my life that didn't require a blueprint or a safety inspection. It was just there. It was the foundation I stood on while I built the rest of the world. Sarah was a corporate consultant, smart, poised, and possessed of a calm that could settle a hurricane. She was the woman who remembered my mother's birthday, the woman who knew exactly how I liked my steak, and the woman who held my hand through 3 grueling, heartbreaking rounds of failed IVF. We lived in a penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. It was a space defined by light, floor-to-ceiling glass and total transparency. Or so I thought. Sarah was heading to Denver for a 3-day leadership summit. I watched her pack her sensible charcoal blazers, her silk blouses, and her leather-bound planner. She kissed me at the door, her jasmine perfume lingering in the hallway long after the elevator had whisked her away. Before we go deeper into this story, take a second and hit that subscribe button. Give this video a like and let us know where you're watching from. I'm curious to know how far these stories travel. I walked back into our bedroom intending to clear the coffee mugs when I saw it. On the mahogany dresser sat her archive key, a small brass thing with a clover-shaped head. She never left it behind. It was the key to the midnight blue satchel she kept in the back of the walk-in closet, the one she called her boring box full of old tax audits. My curiosity wasn't a choice, it was a structural necessity. I stood in that walk-in closet for what felt like an eternity. The silence of the penthouse was deafening, amplified by the hum of the city 70 floors below. I picked up the clover-headed key. It was cold, biting into my palm. I walked to the back of the closet, pushed aside a row of my own Italian-cut suits, and pulled out the bag. It was heavy, far heavier than a collection of paper audits should be. I sat on the plush carpet, the scent of cedar and Sarah's expensive leather filling my lungs. My hands were shaking with a terrifying primal premonition. I inserted the key. It turned with a smooth, mechanical click that sounded like a bone snapping in a quiet room. I pulled back the zipper. The first thing I saw wasn't a tax return. It was a wig, a vibrant, deep crimson wig made of high-quality human hair. Beneath it lay a pair of blue-tinted contact lenses in a sterile case. My stomach did a slow, nauseating roll. Sarah had hazel eyes. Sarah had honey blonde hair. Who was this woman in the bag? I reached deeper, my fingers brushing against cold plastic. I pulled out a leather wallet. On inside was a driver's license for a woman named Elena Vance. The address was in Savannah, Georgia. The photo was Sarah, but it wasn't my Sarah. This woman had a hard, predatory edge to her smile. Her eyes, magnified by those blue lenses, looked like Arctic ice. I began to pull out folders, each one labeled with names of men I recognized from the national news. Senators, developers, titans of industry. Elena Vance wasn't a consultant. She was a professional infiltrator. She was hired to find the one secret that would bring an empire down. I read through the transcripts of her assignments. They were cold, clinical, and devastatingly effective. She knew exactly how to make a man feel like he was the center of the universe, only to pull the rug out from under him once she had the evidence. Then I found the newspaper clipping from 2011. Mock's local woman killed in fiery crash. The article detailed how Elena Vance's car had plummeted off a bridge into the Savannah River during a high-speed pursuit. No body was recovered, but she was declared dead. I married Sarah in 2014. I had spent 12 years sharing a bed with a woman who had legally ceased to exist 3 years before we met. The sun began to set over the lake, casting long, bloody shadows across the closet floor. I should have stopped there, but the architect in me needed to see the full extent of the rot in the foundation. I reached into the bag again, my hand hitting a false bottom. I pried it up with a letter opener, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Inside was a velvet pouch that rattled with a heavy metallic sound. I dumped it out. High-stakes casino markers from the Bellagio, the Wynn, Anna and the Venetian. Each one was worth $50,000. There were 20 of them, $1 million in plastic debt or profit. Tucked into the side pocket was a second passport. It was dark blue, issued by the Republic of Cyprus. The name on the gold embossed page was Sienna Moretti. The photo showed Sarah in a black silk gown, her hair styled in a sleek, severe bun. She looked like royalty, but the kind of royalty that rules the underworld. I found a stack of bank statements for an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The monthly deposits were staggering. Sienna Moretti wasn't just a gambler. She was a cleaner. She moved money through the Vegas tables, laundering it through the chaos of the casino floor until it came out the other side as winnings. Every time Sarah told me she was working late on a merger, was she actually sitting at a baccarat table in Macau? Every time she went to a boring conference, was she laundering millions for the syndicate? Before we continue, take a second and share your thoughts so far on this story below. I read every single one. I looked at my wedding ring, glinting in the dim light of the closet. Was our life together just another commission? Was the Sarah I loved just a way for Sienna Moretti to hide in the most boring, predictable place on earth? The arms of a man who builds skyscrapers? I felt like I was standing on the edge of a roof, and the wind was starting to push. I thought I had reached the bottom of the bag, but then I found the white envelope. It was small, light, and looked entirely too innocent. Inside was a birth certificate. I read the name, Julian Miller Thorne. Date of birth, August 14th, 2018. Place of birth, St. Jude's Medical Center, Seattle, Washington. Mother, Sarah Miller. Father, blank. The room started to spin. 2018. That was the year Sarah had taken a 6-month leave of absence to care for her supposedly dying aunt in Washington. I had visited her twice, but she had always met me at the hotel. While I was back in Chicago, designing a new wing for the art museum and crying over the news that our final round of IVF had failed, Sarah was giving birth to a son, my son. I knew he was mine before I even saw the photo. I saw the date, and I did the math. Once she had told me it was a chemical pregnancy, a flicker of hope that went out before it could even begin. I pulled out the photograph from the back of the envelope. It was a boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old now. He was sitting on a wooden porch, wearing a Chicago Cubs cap, my team. He had my nose, my slightly crooked smile, and a small dark mole on his chin in the exact same spot as mine. He was the living, breathing proof of a betrayal so deep it felt like a physical assault. She hadn't just lied about her past. She had stolen my future. She had stolen my chance to see my son's first steps, to hear his first words, to be a father. The transition from shock to rage is a cold clinical process for a man like me. I didn't throw things. I went to my home office and pulled out a fresh sheet of vellum drafting paper. I began to map it out. Sonora, I wasn't an architect tonight. I was an investigator for family secrets and revenge. Sarah wasn't in Denver. I logged into our joint airline account. She had checked into the flight, but she'd boarded a private charter 20 minutes later. Destination, Seattle. I tracked her secondary credit card. She'd rented a black SUV at SeaTac Airport. I found a recurring GPS signal in a small town called Cle Elum, nestled in the Cascades. I realized then that I wasn't her husband. I was her camouflage. I was the boring architect she returned to when the world of spies and gamblers became too dangerous. I packed a suitcase. I didn't take much, just the blue bag, the documents, and a heavy steel flashlight. I didn't know if I was going there to save her, to confront her, or to destroy the woman who had replaced my life with a fiction. I just knew that by the time the sun came up, the structure of our life would be demolished to the bedrock. The flight to Seattle was a 6-hour descent into a psychological abyss. I sat in coach, surrounded by people living normal lives, while I carried the wreckage of 3 different identities in my carry-on. I read about the men Elena Vance had destroyed. They were powerful, but they were also human, prone to the same blind spots that had allowed Sarah to walk into my life. As the plane touched down in rain-slicked Seattle, the air felt colder. I picked up my rental car and began the drive into the mountains. The further I got from the city, the more the tension in my chest grew. It felt like I was driving into a nightmare that had been running in the background of my life for a decade. I kept looking at Julian's photo on the passenger seat. He would be nearly 8 now. Does he know my name? Does he think his father is dead? The thought made my throat tighten. I wasn't just driving to a confrontation. I was driving toward a son I never knew I had. Every mile felt like a year I had lost. By the time I saw the sign for the gravel road leading to the farmhouse, I wasn't the man who had left Chicago. I was a stranger even to myself. Before we go deeper, I would love to hear your point of view. Tell me what part hit you the hardest in my story and share your thoughts in the comments. Is it the spy life, the stolen millions, or the hidden son that cuts the deepest? The property was a masterclass in defensive design. As an architect, I noticed things a layman would miss. The reinforced steel gate, the thermal sensors hidden in the birdhouses, the way the gravel road was graded to slow down approaching vehicles. It wasn't a home, it was a bunker with a view. I parked my rental a quarter-mile away, my boots sinking into the wet moss. When I finally saw the house, it took my breath away. It was a modern, rustic masterpiece, the exact house Sarah and I used to sketch on napkins during our first year in Chicago. She had built our dream house in secret, with blood money and a stolen son. I saw a movement in the window. A woman walked past holding a cup of tea. It was Sarah. She looked softer here, younger. Then a small figure ran into the frame. Julian. He jumped into her arms and she spun him around. I felt a surge of grief so sharp it physically hurt. I wasn't just a husband. I was a ghost watching a life that was supposed to be mine. Suddenly, the silence of the woods was shattered. 2 black SUVs, lights off, roared up the gravel path. They didn't stop for the gate. They rammed it. I watched as men in tactical gear stepped out, suppressed rifles at the ready. These weren't business associates. These were the ghosts of Elena Vance's past. If you were in Elias' shoes facing a situation like this, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you stay in the shadows to save yourself? Or do you run into the line of fire for a family that doesn't officially exist? I didn't choose. My body moved before my mind did. I sprinted toward the house, screaming Sarah's name. I saw her face appear at the window, the mom mask instantly replaced by the infiltrator. She grabbed Julian and vanished into the interior. A bullet whined past my ear, thudding into a cedar tree. I dived through the mudroom door just as a volley of rounds shredded the siding of the house. The interior of the house was a chaos of flying glass and shouting. Sarah's brother Marcus, a man she'd told me was dead, was leaning over a balcony, returning fire with a submachine gun. "Elias, what the hell are you doing here?" Sarah screamed, dragging me behind a heavy marble kitchen island. "I found the bag, Sarah. I found the lives you stole." I roared back over the deafening crack of gunfire. She didn't apologize. She just checked the magazine of her pistol with a cold, mechanical flick of her wrist. "If you want to live to argue about it, get in the crawl space with Julian. Now." She shoved me toward a hidden door beneath the floorboards. Inside, huddled in the dark, was my son. He was holding a toy crane, the one I'd bought for him, thinking it was for a nephew. He reached out and touched the mole on my chin, then touched the one on his own. "Mom says you build the world," he whispered. The men outside were professional. They weren't trying to storm the house. They were systematic, taking out the cameras and the power lines. The house fell into a terrifying, deep darkness, lit only by the rhythmic flashes of Marcus's muzzle. "They're Vanacek's men," Marcus shouted from above. "They tracked the Sienna Moretti accounts. They don't want the money, Sarah. They want the head of the woman who put their father in a cage." I realized then that Sarah's lies weren't just a choice. They were a survival mechanism. She hadn't just been hiding a son, she had been hiding a target. But as an architect, I saw a flaw they didn't. And the house was built on a cantilevered deck over a rocky creek. If they couldn't get in through the doors, they would blow the support beams and drop us all into the ravine. "Marcus, the east support," I yelled, scrambling out of the crawl space. I knew the structural load-bearing points of this house better than anyone. "They're going for the foundation." I grabbed a heavy fire extinguisher and a roll of industrial tape from the utility closet. I wasn't a soldier, but I knew how to create a diversion. I rigged the extinguisher to a gas line in the mudroom, creating a crude pressurized bomb. "Sarah, give me your lighter." She looked at me, a flicker of respect crossing her face. She tossed it. I ignited the fuse and we dived back into the reinforced kitchen. The explosion didn't destroy the house, but it blew the mudroom outward. We're sending a cloud of white chemical dust and fire into the faces of the men trying to set charges. It bought us the one thing we didn't have: time. In the lull after the explosion, the house felt eerily quiet. The only sound was Julian's heavy, frightened breathing from the crawl space. "You kept him from me for 8 years, I whispered, my voice cracking. "You let me believe I was a failure as a man because we couldn't conceive." "I did it to keep him off the grid, Elias," she said, her voice a flat, dead calm. "In Savannah, they killed my first husband to get to me. I wasn't going to let them do that to you. I chose your grief over your death. I'd make that choice 1,000 times again." Before we continue, take a second and share your thoughts so far on this story below. I read every single one. Was Sarah a monster for stealing those years, or was she a hero for protecting them? The line between the two was disappearing in the smoke. The marshals arrived in a swarm of black helicopters, their spotlights cutting through the mountain mist like the fingers of God. The remaining hitmen vanished into the woods, but it was too late. The GPS beacons Sarah had embedded in the Sienna accounts had led the feds right to the Vanacek's hidden location. The siege was over, but the wreckage of our marriage was just beginning to smolder. As the sun began to rise over the shattered glass of our dream house, I stood on the porch and looked at the woman I had lived with for 12 years. I didn't recognize her. "Who are you today?" I asked. "Elena? Sienna? Or Sarah?" "I'm the woman who kept you alive," she said. But she didn't look me in the eye. I walked back to the crawl space and reached out a hand. Julian took it. He was small, warm, and smelled of the same cedar soap Sarah used. "Are you my dad?" he asked. The question was a physical blow. "I am," I said, my voice thick. "I'm the man who builds the world, and I'm never going to let you be a secret again." I carried him out of that house, past the shell casings and the shattered glass, and I didn't look back at Sarah. I didn't care about the millions in Cyprus or the spies in Savannah. I only cared about the 8 years of birthdays I had to make up for. The move to Vermont wasn't a choice. It was a relocation. The Thorne name was burned. We were given new identities, new lives. This time, together, but under the watchful eye of the government. I don't design skyscrapers anymore. I build small, sturdy homes in a town where no one knows our names. Sarah lives in the house across the lane. We aren't together, not in the way we were. You can't fix a foundation that's been salted with that many lies. But we are parents. We spend our Sundays at the park. I watch Julian play, and I see Sarah watching him from the bench, her hand always near her purse, always checking the perimeter. She will never stop being the infiltrator, and I will never stop being the architect, trying to find a way to make this new fragile structure stand. People ask me if I regret opening that bag. Sometimes in the middle of the night, when the house is too quiet and I'm staring at the blueprints of a life that was a lie, I think I do. Ignorance is a very comfortable house to live in, but then Julian calls me. When he asks me how to build a bridge or why the stars don't fall out of the sky, and I realize that the truth is the only thing worth building on. My revenge wasn't taking the money or exposing Sarah. My revenge was taking back my son. Before we end this, I would love to hear your point of view. Tell me what part hit you the hardest in my story and share your thoughts in the comments. Is it possible to forgive a lie that was told out of love? Or is a lie just a lie? Our life now is quiet. It's honest. It's boring. And it's the most beautiful thing I've ever built. Sarah and I speak in short, guarded sentences. We discuss school schedules and dental appointments. The passion is gone, replaced by a wary respect. She saved my life, and she stole it all in the same breath. We are a house divided, but for Julian's sake, we are standing. I've learned that a marriage isn't a solid object. It's a living thing that requires constant maintenance. And sometimes you have to tear it down to the studs to see if the wood is still good. Thank you for walking through the ruins of my life with me. This story is a reminder that the people we love are often the ones we know the least. We all have bags in the back of our closets. We all have lives we've left behind. If this story gripped you, please hit that like button, subscribe to Family Secrets and Revenge, and share your overall thoughts in the comments below. Your support allows us to keep bringing these hidden histories to light. I'm curious to know, if you found that bag, would you turn the key? Until next time, keep your eyes open and your secrets locked tight. This has been Elias Thorne, and this was my story. Thank you for watching.